The alarms screamed through every corridor of the orbital station. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the command deck, watching Earth burn beneath him. The planet that had been humanity's home for millions of years was dying, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The Krylax had arrived 3 months ago. Nobody knew where they came from or why they chose Earth. They simply appeared at the edge of the solar system and began their approach. At first, humanity thought they could negotiate. They sent messages in every language they knew, offering peace and friendship. The Krylax never responded. They just kept coming. When the first wave hit Mars, humanity finally understood. These creatures didn't want to talk. They didn't want resources or territory. They wanted to consume everything. The Martian colonies went dark in 48 hours. 2 million people vanished as if they had never existed. Jake turned to his communications officer. "Any response from the council?" The young woman shook her head. Her eyes were red from crying. "Nothing, sir." The message was delivered. They received it. They just won't answer. The Galactic Council had made contact with humanity 5 years earlier. It had been the greatest moment in human history. They weren't alone in the universe. There were dozens of advanced species out there, living in peace and prosperity. The Council had promised humanity a place among the stars, once they proved themselves worthy. Now, when humanity needed them most, the Council was silent. "Try again," Jake ordered. "Keep trying until they answer or until we're all dead." Down on Earth, in a bunker beneath what used to be Washington, Dr. Lisa Grant worked frantically on her calculations. She had been working for 60 hours straight, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. Her team had discovered something in the old archives, a theoretical weapon that might hurt the Krylax. It was dangerous and untested, but they had no choice. "How long?" Commander Kyle Bennett asked from the doorway. Lisa didn't look up from her screen. 2 days. Maybe 3, if we're lucky. "We don't have 3 days, Kyle said quietly. "New York fell an hour ago. They're moving faster now. At this rate, we have maybe 24 hours before they reach this position." Lisa's hand stopped moving on the keyboard. She finally looked at him. "Then we'll work faster." Kyle nodded and left her to her work. He made his way through the bunker to the command center. The walls shook as another explosion hit somewhere above them. The defense grid was failing. Humanity's most advanced weapons barely slowed the Krylax down. In orbit, Jake finally received a transmission. For a moment, his heart jumped. Maybe the Council had changed their minds. Maybe help was coming, but it wasn't a promise of aid. It was something much worse. The holographic image of Ambassador Thelron appeared in the center of the command deck. He was a Viridian, tall and elegant with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed too large for his face. His species had been among the stars for thousands of years. They considered themselves the wisest race in the galaxy. "Captain Morrison," Thelron said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "I bring the Council's final decision regarding your request for assistance." Jake felt his stomach turn to ice. "Final decision? You mean you're going to help us?" "I'm afraid not," Thelron replied. "The Council has debated your situation extensively. While we sympathize with your plight, we cannot justify the risk of intervention. Humanity is still a developing species. Your technology is primitive. Your culture is violent, and your history is filled with warfare and destruction. The Council believes that saving you would destabilize the Galactic Order." Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. Destabilize? There are 8 billion people down there. "They're dying!" "Yes," Thelron said, "and that is unfortunate. But the Council must think of the greater good. We have rules, Captain. We cannot break them for every species that faces extinction. If we did, where would it end?" "You're saying our lives aren't worth your rules?" "I'm saying that the Council has made its decision. I'm sorry, Captain Morrison."
"Truly I am."
"But this is the end for humanity. I suggest you make peace with that fact." The transmission ended. Jake stood frozen, staring at the empty space where the hologram had been. Around him, his crew sat in stunned silence. They had believed help was coming. They had believed the Council would save them. "Sir," the communications officer said softly, "I'm intercepting Council transmissions. They're ordering their member species not to help us. Anyone who tries will be expelled from the Council and sanctioned." Jake's grief turned to rage. "They're not just abandoning us. They're making sure nobody else can help either. What do we do, sir?" Jake looked down at Earth. He could see the fires spreading across the continents. He could see the Krylax swarms moving like dark clouds over the cities. Millions were dying every hour. Soon there would be nothing left. "Get me Commander Bennett," he said, "and contact every ship in the fleet. We're going to buy Earth as much time as we can." Down in the bunker, Lisa finally had her breakthrough. The weapon would work. It wouldn't stop the Krylax, but it would hurt them badly enough to slow them down, maybe long enough for some people to escape. She ran to Kyle's office. "I've got it. We can build it in 12 hours. Kyle looked up from his desk. His face was gray with exhaustion. "Lisa, I need to tell you something. We're launching the colony ships." "What, already? But the weapon won't be ready in time." "Jake just told me what the council said. They're not coming. Nobody's coming. We have maybe 10 hours before the Krylax overrun this position. We're loading everyone we can onto the ships and sending them into deep space. How many can we save?" 10,000. "Maybe 12 if we pack them in tight. Out of 8 billion. Lisa felt the weight of those numbers crush down on her. "That's all?" "That's all we have ships for. I'm sorry, Lisa, but you need to be on one of those ships. Your knowledge is too valuable to lose." "What about you? What about Jake?" Kyle smiled sadly. "Someone needs to hold the line. Someone needs to make sure those ships get away safely. Jake's gathering the fleet for one last battle. I'm going to deploy your weapon and make the Krylax pay for every meter of ground they take. But you need to go. Humanity needs to survive, and that means you need to live." Lisa wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. She hugged Kyle tightly. "Make them remember us. Make them pay." "Count on it," Kyle promised. 6 hours later, the colony ships launched. They were massive vessels designed to carry thousands of people into deep space. But they were also slow and vulnerable. They needed time to reach the edge of the system where they could jump to faster-than-light speed. Jake Morrison led the defense fleet out to meet the Krylax. He had 43 ships against a swarm of thousands. The odds were impossible, but they didn't need to win. They just needed to buy time. The battle was brief and brutal. The human ships fought with desperate courage, throwing themselves at the Krylax without hesitation. Jake watched his fleet die around him, one ship after another vanishing in bursts of fire and debris. But they held the line. Every minute they fought was another minute the colony ships flew toward safety. On the ground, Kyle Bennett activated Lisa's weapon. The device tore through the Krylax ranks, killing thousands of them in seconds. But there were always more. They kept coming like an endless tide of death. Kyle stood in the ruins of the bunker as the Krylax closed in. He had known for hours that he wouldn't survive. But that was fine. He had done his duty. He had bought humanity a few more precious hours. In orbit, Jake's ship took a direct hit. Alarms blared as the hull ruptured and fires broke out across 3 decks. He didn't care. Through the smoke and flames, he watched his sensors. The colony ships were almost at the jump point. "Come on," he whispered. "Just a little further." Then with a flash of light, they jumped. 10,000 humans vanished into the darkness between stars, carrying the last hope of their species with them. Jake allowed himself a smile. They had done it. Humanity would survive. His ship took another hit and everything went dark. Earth fell 12 hours later. The Krylax consumed everything, leaving nothing but a dead, barren rock where a thriving world had once been. 8 billion humans died, their voices silenced forever, but 10,000 survived, and they would remember. They would remember Earth. They would remember everyone they lost. And most of all, they would remember that the Galactic Council let it happen. In the cold darkness of space, aboard the colony ship New Haven, Lisa Grant stood at a viewport and watched Earth's sun shrink behind them. Tears ran down her face, but her jaw was set with determination. "They let us die," she whispered. "One day they'll answer for that." 5 years had passed since Earth died. The colony ships drifted through the empty spaces between stars, hiding from everything and everyone. The 10,000 survivors had become a people without a home, wandering the darkness and hoping each day wouldn't be their last. Jake Morrison had survived. Against all odds, a rescue pod from his exploding ship had found its way to the fleeing colony vessels. Now he commanded the small fleet from the bridge of the Retribution, a ship built from parts salvaged from 3 other vessels. He looked older than his 50 years. The weight of command and grief had carved deep lines into his face. "Any sign of pursuit?" he asked. Lieutenant Marcus Cole studied his sensors. The young pilot had lost his entire family on Earth. His parents, his sister, his girlfriend. All gone. Like so many others, vengeance was the only thing that kept him going. "Nothing, sir. We're alone out here." That's what worries me, Jake muttered. The council knows we survived. They're probably looking for us. On the New Haven, Dr. Lisa Grant worked in her laboratory. She had aged too, but not from years. The grief had aged her soul. She barely slept anymore, spending every hour working on new weapons and defenses. If the council or the Krylax found them, humanity needed to be ready. Commander Amy Rogers entered the lab. She was the captain of the New Haven, responsible for protecting the civilian population. She had been a cargo ship pilot before the war. Now she commanded the largest vessel in humanity's fleet. You need to rest, Lisa. I'll rest when we're safe, Lisa replied without looking up. We'll never be safe. Not out here. Not running forever. Lisa finally turned to face her. Then what do you suggest? Amy didn't have an answer. Nobody did. They were running on borrowed time, and everyone knew it. The ships were old and breaking down. Food was running low despite strict rationing. Children were being born into a life of fear and uncertainty. This wasn't survival. It was just a slower death. Everything changed when they detected the signal. It was Marcus who found it during a routine sensor sweep. A transmission coming from deep space, far from any known star system. It was old, maybe thousands of years old, but it was artificial. Someone or something had built a transmitter out there in the void. Jake called a meeting of the fleet's leaders. Lisa, Amy, Marcus, and a dozen others gathered in the Retribution's conference room. It could be a trap, Amy said. The council could be luring us in. The transmission is too old, Lisa countered. Whatever sent this has been here for thousands of years. What does the message say? Jake asked. Marcus pulled up the translation on a screen. It's a warning. It says the council lies. They let us die too. Come and learn the truth. The room fell silent. Finally, Jake spoke. We're going to investigate. 2 days later, the fleet arrived at the coordinates. What they found shocked them all. It was a station, massive and ancient, floating in the darkness between stars. It was dead, its power gone, but it was intact. Jake led an exploration team inside. Marcus and Lisa came with him, along with 10 armed soldiers. They moved through dark corridors, their lights cutting through thousands of years of dust and silence. This place is huge, Marcus whispered. Who built it? They found their answer in what looked like a central archive. When Lisa connected a power cell to the systems, they flickered to life. The station's computers were old but functional, and they contained information that changed everything. The Galactic Council had done this before, not once but dozens of times. Every few thousand years, a new species would rise and threaten the Council's dominance. And every time, the Council found a way to eliminate them. Sometimes they engineered plagues. Sometimes they hired mercenaries. And sometimes they simply let nature take its course. Look at this, Lisa said, her voice shaking. She pulled up a file. The Kethrin. They were advanced, peaceful, and creative. The Council deemed them too unpredictable, so when a rogue asteroid threatened their homeworld, the Council had the technology to stop it. They chose not to. 4 billion Kethrin died. Marcus found another file. The Zorvath. Military geniuses. The Council was afraid they'd challenge them for power, so they hired the Krylax to wipe them out. The Krylax work for the Council? Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Worked, Lisa corrected. Past tense. According to this, the Krylax got out of control. The Council can't stop them anymore. They're just hoping the swarm will exhaust itself before it reaches Council space. Amy, listening through the communication link, spoke up. So the Council let Earth die because they were afraid of us? Not just afraid, Lisa said, reading more files. Threatened. Earth's scientific progress was too fast. Our military tactics were too effective. The Council's projections showed that in another 100 years, humanity would be advanced enough to challenge their dominance. So they let the Krylax take care of the problem. Jake felt rage building inside him like a nuclear fire. They murdered 8 billion people because we might become a threat? It's worse than that, Marcus said. He had found a map showing dozens of star systems marked in red. These are all species the Council has eliminated or abandoned. We're not the first. We're just the latest. They spent 3 days exploring the station and copying every bit of data they could. The archive contained not just historical records, but technical information. Weapons blueprints, shield designs, faster-than-light engine configurations that were far beyond anything the Council was currently using. Whoever built this station had left behind enough knowledge to arm a rebellion. On the last day, they found a message. It was a video recording left by the builders of the station. A woman appeared on the screen, her species unknown but humanoid. She looked tired and sad. If you're watching this, then you survived what the council did to you. Congratulations. You're stronger than we were. We couldn't fight back. We didn't have the time or the resources, but we built this place for others. For species like you, everything you need to know about the council is here. Their weaknesses, their lies, their crimes. Use it, make them pay. Make sure no other species suffers what we suffered. Don't let them forget. Don't let them win. The recording ended. Jake looked at his team. In their eyes, he saw the same thing he felt in his heart. Not just anger, but purpose. We're not running anymore, he said. We're going to make them answer for what they did. Back on the fleet, Jake called another meeting. This time, he addressed everyone through the communication system. All 10,000 survivors listened as he spoke. We've spent 5 years running and hiding, 5 years waiting to die. But I'm done waiting. I'm done hiding. The council let Earth burn. They let 8 billion of our people die because they were afraid of what we might become. Well, I say we show them exactly what we can become. He paused, letting his words sink in. The information we found on that station gives us a chance, a real chance to fight back. It won't be easy. Most of us will probably die, but we'll die on our feet, making the council pay for every life they took from us. Or we can keep running until our ships fall apart and we starve in the darkness. The choice is yours. The vote was unanimous. Every single survivor chose to fight. Over the next months, everything changed. Lisa used the ancient blueprints to begin designing new weapons. They couldn't build massive warships with their limited resources, but they could build smaller, faster, deadlier vessels, ships that could strike hard and vanish before the enemy could respond. Marcus took 3 volunteers and began scouting council space. They used the new stealth technology from the archive to slip past council sensors. They mapped trade routes, military installations, and communication networks. Every bit of information would be valuable when the war began. Amy worked with the civilian population, turning them into a military force. Everyone trained, from teenagers to elderly. They learned to shoot, to fight hand-to-hand, to pilot ships and operate weapons. The survivors of Earth were becoming warriors, and Jake planned. He studied every file from the archive, learning about council politics and military doctrine. He identified their weaknesses and the cracks in their alliance. He began to see how a small force could hurt a large empire, not through direct confrontation, but through precision and terror. One night, Lisa found Jake in his quarters, staring at a photo of Earth. "You should sleep," she said. "I see their faces when I sleep," Jake replied. "Everyone we lost. My wife, my children, your colleagues, Kyle, all of them. The council took them from us, and they didn't even have the decency to feel guilty about it. Then we make them feel guilty. We make them understand what they did." Jake nodded. "It's going to be bloody, Lisa. We're going to have to do terrible things." "I know, but we're going to do them anyway. Because if we don't, the council will do this again to someone else. When we start this war, there's no going back. We'll be committing humanity to a path of violence and death." Lisa put her hand on his shoulder. "They committed us to that path when they let Earth die. We're just following through." 2 years after finding the station, humanity was ready. The fleet had been rebuilt. New ships filled with new weapons waited in the darkness. Soldiers stood ready. Plans had been made and contingencies prepared. Jake stood on the bridge of the Retribution and gave the order that would change everything. "Take us to council space. It's time to make them pay." 10 years had passed since Earth fell. The human survivors had transformed from desperate refugees into something harder and more dangerous. They had built a hidden base deep inside the Crimson Nebula, a cloud of gas and dust that scrambled sensors and hid them from council detection. Here in secret, humanity sharpened itself into a weapon. Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the construction bay, watching workers assemble the latest ship. It was smaller than a council destroyer, but packed with weapons that could tear through their shields. Lisa had named the class Reaper. It was a fitting name for ships built to harvest council lives. "How many are ready?" Jake asked. Lisa stood beside him, her hair now streaked with gray. She wore coveralls stained with grease and oil. These days, she spent more time in the construction bays than in her laboratory. 20 operational, another 30 in various stages of completion. We should have a full fleet of 80 within 6 months. That's not enough to take on the council's military. It's enough to make them bleed. Besides, we're not relying on ships alone anymore. Lisa pulled up a holographic display showing their hidden base. It had grown considerably over the years. What started as a few ships hiding in a nebula had become a small city. Factories, living quarters, training facilities, and weapons laboratories, all protected by layers of stealth technology. Commander Amy Rogers approached them. She now commanded not just the New Haven, but the entire civilian defense fleet. Under her leadership, every ship had been converted into a fighting vessel. Even the medical ships carried weapons now. "We just received word from Marcus," Amy said. "He's back from council space." "Already?" Jake asked. "He's only been gone 3 weeks. He says it's urgent. He's requesting a command meeting in 1 hour." They gathered in the war room, a chamber at the heart of the base filled with screens and tactical displays. Marcus Cole stood at the center looking exhausted but excited. He had changed too over the years. The young pilot had become a hardened intelligence officer, one of the best scouts in the fleet. "I found something," Marcus said without preamble. He brought up a star map. "This is the Viridian home system. 3 planets, 2 of them heavily populated. We know about the Viridian system," Jake said. "What's special about it?" "This," Marcus said, highlighting one of the planets. "Thelron Prime. It's where Ambassador Thelron is from. The same ambassador who told us the Council wouldn't help Earth." The room went silent. Everyone remembered Thelron's cold, dismissive words as billions of humans died. "He's still there," Marcus continued, "living in a palace on the coast, protected by minimal security because the Viridians don't think anyone would dare attack them." "You want to go after him personally?" Amy asked. "I'm saying he's a perfect first target, high-profile, symbolic, and relatively easy to reach. If we capture Thelron and put him on trial, the whole galaxy will watch. We can expose what the Council did to Earth." A young woman spoke up from the back of the room. Her name was Elena Price, and she had become humanity's best strategic mind. She had been only 15 when Earth fell, barely old enough to remember her old life. Now she was 25 and had studied every military campaign in human and alien history. "Marcus is right," Elena said, "but we need to be careful about how we do this. If we just destroy Thelron Prime, we look like monsters. If we capture Thelron and expose the Council's crimes, we look like victims seeking justice." "Can we pull it off without massive casualties?" Jake asked. "If we're smart about it," Elena replied. She brought up her own tactical display. "We hit the military installations first. Quick and surgical. We broadcast warnings to civilians to take shelter. Then we go after Thelron personally. The key is to show we're not interested in killing innocents. We want justice, not genocide." Over the next months, they refined the plan. Marcus made 2 more trips to Viridian space, mapping out every detail they would need. Lisa designed specialized weapons that could disable defenses without destroying entire cities. Elena wargamed every possible scenario, preparing for every contingency. Meanwhile, the alliance Amy had been building came to fruition. She had spent years making contact with other species the Council had abandoned or mistreated. Some had survived their encounters with the Council's cruelty. Others were newer members who had been exploited and abused. They called themselves the Forsaken. 7 species united by their hatred of the Council. The largest group was the Corvin, a reptilian species whose colony worlds had been seized by the Council for their mineral wealth. There were also the Nath, an aquatic people whose homeworld had been polluted by Council industrial projects. And 5 other species, each with their own grievances. "They're willing to fight with us," Amy reported. "But they want proof we can actually hurt the Council. Talk is cheap. They need to see action." "Then we'll give them action," Jake said. "The attack on Thelron Prime will be that proof." They also had an unexpected success. Marcus had intercepted a Council patrol ship during one of his scouting missions. Using the Reaper-class ship's superior speed and weapons, he had destroyed the patrol before they could send a distress signal. The humans recovered the wreckage and brought it back to the base. Lisa and her team spent weeks studying the captured technology. They learned how Council shields worked, how their weapons operated, and most importantly, how to defeat them. Every weakness they discovered went into the database, shared with every pilot and soldier in the fleet. "Their shield systems are powerful but inflexible," Lisa explained during a briefing. "They're designed to withstand prolonged bombardment, but if you hit them with rapid, concentrated fire in the same spot, you can overload the generators. Once the shields drop, their hulls are actually weaker than ours." Commander Peter Hayes, captain of the first completed Reaper-class ship named Vengeance, smiled at the news. He was a veteran of Earth's final battle and had lost an arm fighting the Krylax. The prosthetic replacement made him look more machine than man. So we can take them, Peter said. In small numbers, yes. But remember, the Council has thousands of ships. We have less than 100. We can't win a straight fight. Then we won't fight straight, Elena interjected. We hit them where they're weak, avoid their strength, and make them chase shadows. Classic guerrilla warfare. As preparations continued, Jake found himself thinking about what came after. If they succeeded, if they actually managed to hurt the Council, what then? Would they become the very thing they hated? Would they turn into conquerors and tyrants? Lisa found him one night in the observation deck, staring out at the swirling colors of the nebula. Having doubts? She asked, always. But that doesn't mean I'll stop. Good, because I need you to see something. She led him to a new section of the base he hadn't visited before. Inside was a vast chamber filled with holographic displays. Each one showed a different species, their planets, their history. What is this? Jake asked. A memorial. For everyone the Council has destroyed. I've been collecting the data from the archive we found. 47 species over 3,000 years. Some died in wars. Some died in plagues. Some died in accidents that weren't accidents at all. The Council has killed trillions to maintain their power. Jake walked among the displays, seeing faces of aliens he would never meet. Civilizations that had thrived and been snuffed out because they posed a threat to the Council's control. We're not doing this just for Earth, Lisa continued. We're doing this for all of them, so the Council can never do this again. And if we become monsters in the process, then we become monsters. But at least we'll be monsters fighting for something right. The day of the attack finally arrived. The fleet assembled at the edge of Council space. Jake stood on the bridge of the Retribution, surrounded by his command crew. Around him, 80 ships waited for his orders. The Reaper-class vessels, sleek and deadly. The converted colony ships, bristling with weapons. And the ships of the Forsaken, ready to fight alongside humanity. All ships report ready, Marcus announced. Broadcast the message, Jake ordered. Elena had prepared a transmission that would be sent to every news network in Council space the moment they attacked. It contained everything: footage of Earth's fall, recordings of Ambassador Thelron's refusal to help, evidence from the archive showing the Council's long history of genocide, and a simple message: humanity demands justice. Message loaded and ready to transmit. The communications officer reported. Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment. Once they jumped into Viridian space, there was no turning back. They would be at war with the most powerful government in the galaxy. Most of them would probably die. But they would die making the Council pay. All ships, Jake said, his voice carrying to every vessel in the fleet. Remember Earth, remember everyone we lost. Remember that the Council chose to let them die. Today we make sure the Council remembers too. He paused, then gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. Jump. Reality twisted as the faster-than-light engines engaged. When the universe snapped back into focus, they were in Viridian space. Thelron Prime hung before them, a beautiful blue and green world that had never known war. Begin the operation, Jake commanded. The Reaper ships shot forward, moving faster than the Viridian defense sensors could track. They struck the orbital defense platforms with. The trial of Ambassador Thelron was broadcast across every inhabited system in the galaxy. Jake Morrison had ordered a stage built in one of the Retribution's cargo bays, large enough for cameras and witnesses. He wanted everyone to see this. He wanted the truth exposed in a way that couldn't be ignored or denied. Thelron stood in the center of the bay, his hands bound but his head held high. He still carried himself with the arrogance of someone who believed he was superior to those around him. Even now, facing judgment from a species he had helped destroy, he showed no remorse. Jake sat at a simple table serving as the judge's bench. He wore his uniform, clean and pressed, but he refused to make this a military tribunal. This was about justice, not vengeance. Around the bay, representatives from the Forsaken species watched, along with human survivors who had lost everything. Ambassador Thelron, Jake began, his voice echoing through the chamber and across billions of viewing screens. You stand accused of crimes against humanity. Specifically, of knowingly allowing the extinction of 8 billion human beings when you had the power to prevent it. How do you answer? Thelron's large eyes narrowed. I acted according to the Council's laws and procedures. I have committed no crime. Then let's review those procedures, Jake said. He nodded to Lisa, who activated a holographic display. The first image showed Earth from space, beautiful and blue. Then came footage of the Krylax attack. Cities burning, people screaming, millions dying as the swarm consumed everything in its path. This was happening, Jake continued, while humanity sent message after message begging for help. Messages you received, messages you ignored. The council debated, Thelrin started. For 3 months, Jake interrupted. You debated for 3 months while billions died. And then you sent this message. The recording played. Thelrin's own words, cold and dismissive, explaining that humanity was too primitive and too violent to save. That helping Earth would destabilize the galactic order. That the council had rules it couldn't break. When the recording ended, Jake continued. But we found something interesting in our research, Ambassador. We found records of 23 times in the last 1,000 years, when the council broke its own rules to save species it deemed valuable. The Corvin received military aid when pirates threatened their homeworld. The Viridian Empire itself received advanced technology when disease threatened to wipe out your population 500 years ago. So the council can break its rules. It just chose not to break them for us. Those were different circumstances, Thelrin argued, were they? Or was the real reason this? Lisa brought up files from the ancient archive. Projections showing humanity's technological growth, military analyses of Earth's combat effectiveness, psychological profiles suggesting humans were too independent and too creative to be controlled by the council. You were afraid of us, Jake said quietly. You were afraid that in another century, humanity would be strong enough to challenge the council's dominance. So you let the Krylax solve your problem. 8 billion people dead because you were afraid of what they might become. We protect the galactic order, Thelrin shouted, his composure finally cracking. We maintain peace and stability. Your species was aggressive, violent, and unpredictable. If we had saved you, you would have become a threat to everything we've built. And there it is, Jake said. The truth, finally. You didn't let us die because you couldn't save us. You let us die because you chose not to. Because you valued your power more than 8 billion lives. The chamber erupted in shouts and arguments. Some of the Forsaken representatives called for Thelrin's immediate execution. Others demanded he be returned to his people to face justice there. The humans in the room simply watched with hard, cold eyes. Jake hammered for silence. This trial is not about revenge. It's about accountability. Ambassador Thelrin acted on behalf of the Galactic Council. The Council must answer for what it did. The Council will crush you, Thelrin said. You're a handful of survivors in obsolete ships. We have thousands of warships, millions of soldiers. You cannot win this war. Maybe not, Jake agreed. But we'll make you remember us. We'll make sure every species in the galaxy knows what you did. And we'll make you pay for every life you took. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty of crimes against sentient beings. The sentence was life imprisonment. To be served in a specially constructed facility where Thelrin would spend his remaining years watched by those whose lives the Council had destroyed. But the trial was just the beginning. As soon as the broadcast ended, Council warships jumped into Viridian space. 5 battle groups, over 200 ships commanded by Admiral Korthas of the Council Defense Fleet. Korthas was a professional soldier, a member of the Dren species known for their military discipline. He had fought pirates and rebels for 30 years, always winning, always efficient. Now he faced an enemy that had humiliated the Council by striking at the heart of Viridian space. All human vessels, this is Admiral Korthas. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Release Ambassador Thelrin, turn over your ships and submit to Council authority. Refuse and you will be destroyed. On the Retribution's bridge, Jake listened to the ultimatum and smiled. Elena, is everything ready? All ships in position, sir. Marcus, what's their formation? Standard Council battle formation. Heavy ships in front, support vessels in the rear. They're expecting a conventional fight. Then let's show them we don't fight conventionally. Activate the plan. The human fleet didn't try to fight the Council ships. Instead, they scattered in all directions, each ship taking a different vector into deep space. The Council fleet, expecting a battle, found itself chasing shadows. They're running, Admiral Korthas reported to his officers. All ships pursue. We'll hunt them down one by one. But the humans weren't running. They were repositioning. Each ship had been given specific coordinates, specific targets. While the Council fleet wasted time chasing the main fleet, smaller human vessels emerged from hiding spots throughout the system. Commander Amy Rogers led one group against a Council supply depot on the edge of the system. Her ships struck fast, destroying the facility's defenses and broadcasting another message to the galaxy. This one showed the inside of the depot, filled with weapons and supplies marked for use against civilian populations. "This is what your Council does," Amy's message declared. "They maintain peace through intimidation and violence. They hoard weapons while telling member species they're protected. Ask yourself who these weapons are meant for." Commander Peter Hayes took his squadron of Reaper ships against a Council communication hub. The station was lightly defended, designed to monitor messages and enforce Council censorship. Peter's ships tore through the defenses in minutes, then broadcast a simple message before destroying the station entirely. "We will not be silenced, we will not be forgotten, and we will not stop until the Council answers for its crimes." Meanwhile, Marcus Cole led special operations teams to 3 different Council facilities. His targets weren't military installations but information centers. They captured servers and data cores, stealing terabytes of classified Council information. Most importantly, they found evidence that the Council had been planning to deal with humanity even before the Krylax arrived. Contingency plans for managing the human problem through economic sanctions, political isolation, and, if necessary, military action. Admiral Corthus realized too late that he had been outmaneuvered. His fleet was scattered across the system, chasing individual human ships while the real attacks happened elsewhere. When he finally gathered his forces to mount a counterattack, the humans had already jumped to faster-than-light speed, vanishing into the darkness between stars. The damage was done. Not just the physical destruction of Council facilities, but the psychological impact. The Council had been humiliated. Their vaunted military had been made to look foolish by a handful of survivors in smaller ships. And worst of all, the truth about their crimes was spreading across the galaxy. On the Council's capital world of Centralis, the Supreme Chancellor Vorath convened an emergency session. The Council chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all shouting and arguing. Some demanded immediate military action against humanity. Others questioned whether the accusations were true. A few quietly suggested that maybe the humans had a point. "Order," Vorath commanded. The Supreme Chancellor was a being of pure energy, contained within a specialized suit that gave them physical form. They had led the Council for 300 years, always maintaining stability and control. Now that control was slipping. "The humans have declared war on the Council," Vorath announced. "They have attacked our facilities, destroyed our property, and broadcast lies and propaganda to undermine our authority. We must respond with overwhelming force. Are they lies?" a voice asked from the back of the chamber. It belonged to Representative Kayla, a young member from a recently inducted species. The evidence they broadcast looked authentic, the ambassador's own words condemning Earth to death. "The file showing we've done this before to other species." "Fabrications," Vorath declared. "Clever forgeries designed to turn our member species against us." "Then let's prove they're false," Kayla challenged. "Open the archives. Show." 13 years after Earth's fall, the galaxy was burning. What started as humanity's quest for justice had transformed into something larger and more chaotic than anyone had anticipated. The war between humanity and the Council had spread across hundreds of star systems, drawing in dozens of species on both sides. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the war room of the hidden base, now expanded to 3 times its original size. The holographic display before him showed the entire galactic map, marked with colored symbols representing different factions. Red for Council loyalists, blue for the Forsaken Alliance, yellow for neutral systems, and black for territories lost to the Krylax. There was too much black on the map now. "The Krylax just took the Helion system," Marcus Cole reported. He was back from another scouting mission, exhausted and running on stimulants. 3 colony worlds, 5 billion people. The Council fleet that was supposed to defend them had been reassigned to hunt us. Jake felt the weight of those deaths pressing down on him. 5 billion more lives lost, this time, partly because of choices he had made. The Council had withdrawn defensive fleets to fight humanity, leaving gaps in their perimeter. The Krylax had poured through those gaps like water through a broken dam. "Did we warn them?" Jake asked. "We sent the intelligence 3 days before the attack. The Council ignored it. They thought it was a trick to lure their ships away from hunting us. So they let 5 billion people die because they were too proud to listen to us," Lisa said bitterly. She looked older now, worn down by years of constant work and stress. How is that different from what they did to Earth? It's not, Jake admitted. But we can't let that stop us. If we surrender now, the Council will execute us and bury the truth forever. Elena, what's the latest on Council public opinion? Elena Price had become the voice of humanity's cause, broadcasting messages and evidence to the galaxy at large. She had aged from a young strategist into a hardened veteran of information warfare. We're winning the propaganda war, Elena reported. 60% of Council citizens now believe we were unjustly treated. 25% actively support our cause. But the Council leadership isn't backing down. Supreme Chancellor Vorath has declared us terrorists and criminals. Any species that aids us faces expulsion and sanctions. What about the Forsaken? Growing rapidly. We started with 7 species. Now we have 22, with more joining every month. But there's a problem. She brought up data showing the composition of the Forsaken Alliance. It was a mess of competing interests and old grudges. Some species wanted justice like humanity did. Others just wanted revenge. A few saw this as an opportunity to settle old territorial disputes while the Council was distracted. We're not leading a unified alliance, Elena continued. We're herding cats. Half our members won't work together because of historical conflicts. The Corvin won't fight alongside the Nath because of a trade dispute from 50 years ago. It's getting harder to coordinate operations. Commander Amy Rogers entered the war room, her uniform dusty from inspecting the shipyards. The civilian fleet had been militarized completely now, with every available person working to build more ships or support the war effort. We have bigger problems, Amy announced. I just got reports from our supply lines. We're running low on everything. Food, fuel, ammunition, replacement parts. We can keep fighting for maybe 6 months at current consumption. After that, we're done, Jake nodded. He had known this was coming. Humanity had been punching above its weight for over a year now, but the laws of logistics couldn't be ignored. They were a small force fighting an enormous empire. Eventually, they would run out of resources. What about the liberated systems? Jake asked. Can they help? Some are trying, but the Council is blockading them. Any ship that tries to reach us gets intercepted. We've lost 3 supply convoys in the last month. The door opened and Commander Peter Hayes entered, supported by 2 medical staff. He had been injured in the last battle, taking shrapnel to his chest when his ship was hit. The doctors had told him to rest for at least a month. He had given them 3 days before returning to duty. What's the status of the fleet? Jake asked. Operational barely, Peter said, wincing as he sat down. We have 46 capital ships, 73 Reaper-class vessels, and about 200 support craft. But everything's held together with spare parts and prayer. We need time for major repairs, and we're not getting it. The Council fleet? Over 3,000 ships now, and they're adapting to our tactics. They've started using smaller, faster patrol groups instead of big battle formations. It's harder to hit them and disappear now. We lost 6 ships last week at the Cordath system. Jake felt each loss like a physical blow. Every ship destroyed meant dozens or hundreds of humans dead. People who had survived Earth's fall only to die in the void of space far from any home. We need a major victory, Elena said. Something to prove we're still a threat. Something to keep the Forsaken united and give the Council citizens more reason to doubt their leadership. What did you have in mind? Intelligence suggests the Council is moving a massive weapons shipment through the Meridian Gate next week. Advanced technology they've been hoarding for centuries. If we could capture that shipment instead of destroying it, we'd have resources to keep fighting for years. The Meridian Gate is one of the most heavily defended points in Council space, Marcus objected. There's a permanent fleet stationed there. Maybe 500 ships, I know. But it's also a choke point. Every ship passing through has to slow down to navigate the gravitational currents. If we time it right, we could hit the convoy while it's vulnerable, grab what we can, and escape before the defense fleet reacts. That's a huge risk, Amy said. Everything we do is a huge risk, Elena countered. The question is whether the potential gain is worth it. Jake studied the tactical map of the Meridian Gate. It was indeed a choke point, a region of space where several jump routes converged. Natural gravitational anomalies made faster-than-light travel difficult, forcing ships to drop to slower speeds to navigate safely. That made it strategic but also dangerous. How good is the intelligence? He asked Marcus. Very good. We have someone inside Council logistics. The shipment is real and the route is confirmed. Someone inside. Since when do we have spies in council operations? Since 6 months ago. Turns out a lot of council citizens don't like their government anymore. Some of them have been feeding us information. Jake considered the options. They needed resources desperately. But throwing the fleet into a major battle against overwhelming odds could end the war in a single disastrous defeat. All right, he decided. We'll do it. But we do it smart. Elena, work up a detailed plan. Marcus, I want every bit of intelligence you can gather about that gate. Amy, prepare the fleet for a major operation. Peter, you're staying behind on this one. Sir, you can barely walk. I need you alive more than I need you on a ship. Train the next generation of Reaper pilots. That's an order. Peter looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. Over the next week, preparations intensified. Lisa worked with her engineers to create specialized equipment for capturing ships instead of destroying them. Elena wargamed every possible scenario with the tactical team. Marcus made 2 more trips to scout the Meridian Gate, mapping out every ship position and patrol route. But 3 days before the planned operation, everything changed. Marcus returned from his final scouting run with devastating news. The council knows we're coming. The shipment route has been changed, and there's a fleet waiting in ambush near the gate. 2,000 ships, sir. It's a trap. The war room fell silent. Finally, Jake spoke. How did they know? Our spy. They caught her. I managed to intercept a transmission before jumping back. She was executed an hour ago. Jake closed his eyes. Another life lost to this war. A brave soul who had risked everything to help them, now dead. Did she give us up before she died? Amy asked. No. According to the transmission, she told them nothing. They only figured out our target by analyzing patterns in our previous raids. The Council's military intelligence is better than we thought. So what do we do? Elena asked. Cancel the operation? We can't, Lisa interjected. Word has already spread through the Forsaken Alliance. If we back down now, we look weak. Some of our allies might decide they're better off making peace with the Council. But if we attack into a trap, we lose the fleet, Amy countered. Then it's over anyway. Jake stared at the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. The Council expected them at the Meridian Gate. They had set a trap with overwhelming force. Walking into it would be suicide, unless they changed the game entirely. Marcus, Jake said slowly, you said the shipment route was changed. Where's the new route? Through the Vortex Cluster. It's slower, but more defensible. The cluster's gravitational effects make it hard to operate there, but that protects the convoy from ambush. What if we don't ambush the convoy? What if we attack something else while the Council fleet is waiting at the Meridian Gate? Elena caught on immediately. You want to hit a different target. Make them commit their forces to defending the trap while we strike somewhere they're not expecting. Exactly. They've pulled ships from across their territory to set this ambush. That means other systems are more vulnerable.